Welcome to another edition of Disability and You. I'm Ganesh Singh. On this edition, I will be discussing mental health. We're observing Mental Health Month, and I am working to raise awareness on the issue of mental health in Guyana. With me to discuss mental health and the misconceptions that exist out there as it relates to mental health issues and also challenges persons who are affected by mental health issues encounter on a daily basis is Dr. Dheeraj Bansal, and he's the Dean at the Texila American University um, here in Guyana. Dr. Bansal, welcome to Disability and You, and you're no stranger to these studios because you've been here on a number of occasions discussing mental health.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesh.
First, let's begin by facilitating an understanding for those who might not be familiar with what is mental health.
Mental health, if you go strictly by WHO definition, it's a state of complete emotional, psychological, social, and recently added spiritual well-being. And I'll come to the spiritual part later in our discussion. So that is the official definition. So if I go in the entirety of the definition, it means a person is emotionally, psychologically, and socially healthy, and healthy enough to deal with the normal stresses of life, and to be able to contribute productively to the society, or in other words, play his or her role in the society. That's what the definition of mental health is. But if you want to say it in usual terms, then I would say that anybody who does not get overwhelmed by the emotions that we as human beings feel on a daily basis, fear, anxiety, depression, anger, aggression, things like that. So if you do not have excessive of these things, and whatever difficulties you face in life, you are able to cope with it, using the resources that you have at hand, be it your family members or friend network that you have. So such a person will be called as mentally healthy in very layman terms.
Excellent. And those who are unable to cope and those who are unable to deal with their emotions are those that have, they're considered as having some level of
mental illness.
Illness, yes.
So I think this is why talking about the mental illness is so important. And I want to say it from this platform is that each one of us is mentally ill to some extent. Every time any emotion that overwhelmed us, in that point we are mentally ill. So we have to come out of this concept. To be declared mentally ill, you have to be diagnosed with a psychiatric condition.
And that's a very common misconception.
Exactly. So everybody has dealt with some sort of mental illness in their life. Each one of us has felt the sense of depression at some point of life, and maybe aggression which was totally out of control, anxiety, So we have to stop thinking that mental illness is a separate category where people have been diagnosed with a psychiatric condition to be called mentally ill. So I would say anytime somebody is not able to deal with the stresses of life, anytime you had excessive of these emotions, or anytime you had a very severe reaction, psychological reaction to these emotions, you will, by definition, fall into the category of mentally ill.
And I'm happy that you clarify that, because persons run away with the idea that only persons who have severe mental health conditions or illnesses are those who we consider as being mentally ill. Let us, before we get into some of the challenges that people with mental health issues encounter, let's relate or link our mental well-being and our physical well-being, because a lot of times we have been conditioned to take care of our physical being and neglect our mental well-being. And I know in our past discussions you've said that both is as equally important, and both are interdependent, interrelated. Please expound on that for
They
the
are,
members of the public.
they are, Mr. Ganesh, and as we have talked in the past too, this concept is known as mind-body relationship, which I have talked about in the past too. Our mind and body work as one unit. Anything that affects our physical health will affect mental health, and vice versa. So you cannot deal physical health just by being at the level of physical health. You need to have the mental health concept there too. Similarly, mental health has its physical manifestation. It's a known scientific fact. So you cannot just deal one aspect and not deal the other aspect. So if you deal with physical health, you have to deal with mental health too. And if you deal with mental health, you have to deal with physical health too. Also, physical health has mental manifestation, mental health has physical manifestation. So you can see how closely linked they are. And hence, we really need to understand the concept of mind body relationship, which means one affects the other every time there is something going wrong with one part of this duality of our existence, mental and physical.
Yeah, and if you can provide us with a couple of examples or a few examples, to reinforce the point of how
Sure.
the two are related.
For example, a person with severe depression will have physical manifestation of it. Might develop like mild tremors in the body. Okay, might get at higher risk of some chronic conditions. And similarly, somebody with physical limitation uh, are known to have, people with some kind of physical disability are known to have higher risk of mental illnesses. For example, depression is at least 5 times more common in people with physical disability than with people without any disability. So these are facts in the scientific world that prove this point that they are both interlinked.
Hmm. And even with anxiety, persons will have increased heart rate and other manifestations in
Yes,
physical being.
one of the risk factor for coronary artery disease, or we call it heart disease or heart attacks in layman terms, one of the main risk factors is stress. And stress is nothing but anxiety, fear, all these things. They play a very significant role in precipitating an event of heart attack. Another example how mind and body are linked.
Hmm. Dr. Bansal, we know persons with mental health issues are heavily stigmatized. And they're stigmatized because of many misconceptions that exist out here. Um, and because of this, they do not seek out services, seek out the professionals that can provide the support. What are some other misconceptions? You already clarified a few and shared a few that's, but what are some of the other misconceptions that exist?
Well, I think one of the first misconception that exists regarding mental illness out there is that mental illness means crazy,
Hmm.
which is absolutely wrong. It cannot be farther away from truth. And as I was telling you,
Yeah,
each one of us
have some mental
have
illness.
some mental illness in some extent. Maybe not at the level that it can be diagnosed as a mental illness, but it does exist.
Mhm.
So the first misconception is having a mental illness does not make you any different from any other person sitting next to you who has not been diagnosed with mental illness.
Mhm.
It's just that some of these things have exaggerated in you, and there are ways we can deal with it. And that comes to my next misconception, which is says once you are diagnosed with mental health, then it stays with you for the rest of your life, which is another misconception. I personally know many people who were diagnosed with mental illnesses, and they are very successful in life. A friend of mine, she's a practicing psychiatrist in US, and I have known her for a very long period of time, and she has been dealing with mental illnesses. Actually, she's on medication, and she's a successful practicing psychiatrist helping other people with mental illnesses.
Interesting.
So these are the examples from real life examples. I'm not quoting it from something I read or something I saw. This is my own personal experience. So mental illness, just because you have been diagnosed with mental illness, it's not like you're going to be branded as something not normal. That's another misconception that I would like to talk about. Another misconception is mental illness equal to low intelligence.
Yeah, that's a major one.
And let me tell you certain names of the people who had one or another kind of mental illnesses. Just focus on the names. Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein. Okay, can you call them with low intelligence? Albert Einstein,
Definitely
the
not.
person with highest IQ reported had, some kind of mental illness, most probably bipolar disorder, and so this is I'm talking about Van Gogh, whose paintings are world famous, had mental illness. Now go towards this is the, their achievement, as intelligence. Go towards physical part. Michael Phelps, the highest number of Olympic swimming gold medals, had mental illness. Mike Tyson, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, has dealt with depression, because of something happened in his childhood, has been dealing with depression pretty much his entire young youth life. So what I'm trying to say here is just trying to prove a point that mental illness does not mean low intelligence. Actually, in certain examples that I just gave you, they were proven to be higher than the average intelligence.
I'm also pleased that you shared examples of notable people, and that would help the public to understand that, people that we look up to, people that we idolize,
Yes.
are also affected by mental health issues.
I would just say one thing. Sorry to interject,
Go ahead.
I would highly recommend anybody who's interested, just go on Google and just type famous people with mental illness. I thought I'll get like 10, 20, 30. There were 500 quotations, 500 examples in just one link. So it's there.
It's more common than we actually think it is.
Exactly. And I'm thankful to these famous people that they came out. There might be many more who
I'm
have not
absolutely
talked
sure.
about
I'm
it.
absolutely sure.
So it's time we have to normalize talking about mental health. Everybody should be as much at ease talking about mental health, mental illness, as he or she is talking about diabetes or hypertension, things like that. And that's what I think we are trying to achieve here.
Definitely. Dr. Bansal, when I return after this break, we'll continue our discussion on the misconceptions, challenges, and then we'll look at how can we normalize mental or positive mental well-being here in Guyana, and positive mental health.
Well, let me just complete the list of misconceptions
Go ahead,
first.
go ahead.
Another misconception is there that once I am diagnosed with a mental illness, it's going to stay with me for the rest of my life, which is also not true. There are very good medications available, and if you seek help early on, professional help, your mental health condition, just like somebody has diabetes, doesn't mean he's going to live his life any differently from the person who doesn't have diabetes. Similarly, there are medications now, for majority of mental illnesses that with proper treatment and care, you can lead a very normal life.
Definitely, and that is what people need to understand is
Yes.
that, like technology has evolved, medication has also evolved, because sometimes people are fearful of taking these medications
Yes.
because of the side effects, long-term side effects.
Well, I have to say there was a time, when the medications came very early. Like any other medication, the initial medications for majority of diseases were not as good as we have now.
Precisely.
Same applies for mental illnesses too. Which brings us to our next misconception that all the psychiatric medications are harmful and dangerous. That's a big misconception.
And it's very common.
It's yeah,
It is very
it's
common.
very common. So that's why, I would like to take this opportunity to tell you, we have come a long way in developing psychiatric medications now, and they are very good, very effective. If you seek professional help early on, with the help of these medications, you can lead a very normal life.
Dr. Bansal, are there any more misconceptions that you would like
I
to
think
share?
for today, those are the ones
Those
we
are
need
the
to focus
common,
on. Yeah,
yeah, common.
yeah.
How can, well, before we get into normalizing mental health, what are some of the common challenges people with mental health issues encounter on a daily basis?
Okay, so I will just try to name the major ones. There are so many. Number one challenge, I guess, is stigma against mental illnesses. And this stigma arises from the second challenge, that is lack of knowledge and awareness about mental illnesses. That's a huge challenge. Uh, Third challenge, I would say, which actually we need to talk about, and it doesn't get talked about enough, is unhealthy coping mechanism that people use to deal with mental illnesses. To name some, drinking alcohol, uh, start taking illicit drugs, overeating or not eating at all, isolating themselves, locking themselves up, not seeing people, not meeting people, or start spending excessive amount of time on social media. These are all called unhealthy coping mechanism, and that's a significant challenge for mental health care providers. And we should talk about this more and more. And just to conclude the list, I think social media itself is a challenge. Social media is a double-edged sword. There is good
It is.
information
It
there
is.
too, but most of the time there is wrong information. And and for example, there was a game that was introduced on social media, or a challenge. It's called the whale challenge. Do you remember that? Many teenagers ended up committing suicide
Yeah, I've
because of
heard
that.
of it, yes.
So that's the potential harm in social media. So I'm not saying we ban social media, but as parents, as teachers, we should be aware what our children are spending their time on social media, and maybe limit time on social media. So
Because it comes with the challenges, and then, being on social media, sharing your life basically on social media, it opens you up to all manner of things, including
exactly,
bullying. And then if you consume a lot of toxic material throughout the day, then it's not helping your
it's
mental
not.
well-being
It's making it worse for you. Not only it's not helping, it's making
without
it
you
worse.
even knowing.
Exactly. And that's why I had to bring that up as a challenge. And finally, challenge, I would say, biggest challenge everybody knows is the availability and access to mental health services. So these, I think, would be the significant challenges in case of mental illnesses.
Yeah, because and even if the services are available, um, persons are have this apprehension. They're reluctant
Exactly.
to access the service because of that stigma
That's about the stigma, yes.
that is associated.
Yes.
But I want to go back to this social media
Mm-hmm.
issue, because a lot of times we use social media as a coping mechanism, or we try to use social media as a coping mechanism, and then the information that we consume, we might think it is relaxing us, but implicitly it's doing the opposite.
It's doing the opposite. It's feeding you with wrong information. It's making your condition worse by feeding you, into all these things like anxiety and things like that. And the best example I can give you is of fire. If fire is under control, it can cook for you, it can warm your house. But the same fire, when out of control, can burn your house down
And if you keep adding fuel to it,
if you keep
it
adding
makes it
fuel
worse.
to it. So social media is something like that. Control social media, filtered social media, uh, in which somebody is filtering the right information and not the wrong information, it might be good or can be good potentially. But unfortunately, in my experience, I have seen it does more harm than good.
Yeah, because it's open to everyone.
Exactly. There's no filter.
Yeah, the
There's no
filters
guarding of
are
what
almost
they're watching.
non-existent, even though they say that
Exactly.
they're monitoring systems in place.
Yes.
But how can we normalize mental health? Because we clearly see that one of the major hurdles in people accessing the available services wherever they are available and getting help is the stigma that is associated. But how can we normalize
We
mental
can
health?
normalize it by talking about it again and again and again at different platforms, different levels. We should talk about it at family level. We should talk about it at school level. Mental health should be a part of the essential part of the school curriculum. Teachers should be made sensitive to this issue, and they should be made aware about this issue so they can talk to their students about it. It should be part of the community sessions. There should be discussion in the community. It should be part of a government policy. So it's just talking about at one level is not going to normalize it because it's a very deep rooted stigma. So unless everybody at all levels start talking about it, only then we are going to normalize it. And that's why I said in the beginning, I'm thankful to these celebrities who came out with their own mental illnesses, and that's a huge step towards normalizing it.
It is.
That the people we idolize, the people we think are the best in the world, if they have mental illness and they're okay with it, then I should be okay with it too if I have mental illness.
hmm and that's a major step.
Yes.
But as you said, it needs to be tackled from through a multi-sectoral approach at
Yes.
all levels of our society.
Yes, and also telling people that there are coping mechanisms available. I mean, I'm not even talking about seeking professional help or going into medication, but even some coping skills can be used on a daily basis, not just by people who have been diagnosed, but even other people who have excessive emotions or these things. There are coping mechanisms available which can help them in dealing with them at a very early level.
And that's one of the things that we really need to embrace is that we don't wait for the issue to pop up.
Yes,
We take care of our mental health just like us going to the gym and taking care of our
absolutely, absolutely.
physical being. We do the same with our mental well-being. We keep it healthy.
Which brings us to the point we started our discussion with physical and mental relation. So if you are physically healthy and if you're going to work out regularly, and I don't mean just going to gym, if you run, if you walk, if you do some kind of exercise, yoga, meditation, all that will help you dealing with your mental health issues as well. The mind-body relationship.
Definitely. Dr. Bansal, is there anything else that you would like to share with the members of the public on mental health as we try to raise awareness? Because it's a subject that we can sit here and speak on for hours because of the challenges, the complexities, and the subject as a whole. But is there anything else that you would like to leave with the members of the public?
I would just say, this is something that can go unnoticed, without you even realizing it. Somebody right next to you might be dealing with a mental health issue but not talking about it. A friend of mine in UK has sent me this news. It was a neurologist, a famous neurologist in India. His name was Dr. Sangalkar, if I remember it correctly. Very rich, very famous all over the country. Came home, had dinner, went to the room and shot himself. Mental illness is very, very commonly existing. Your own family member, your own dear friend might be suffering from it, but because of the stigma, because of this sense that, oh, it shows me weak if I admit that I have a mental illness, that's what's doing more harm. So the more we talk about it, the more we talk to our friends, the more we talk to our family, and the sooner we seek professional help, the better it's going to be.
And we're seeing our society becoming more violent as the days go by with the levels of crime. Some of the crimes are of sheer passion, And based on what you would have said, I'm no expert, but you can see that relationship between some of the passion crimes that we see, and definitely we can make an inference that mental health has a role there.
Definitely. And again, feeling rejected, feeling dejected when something goes wrong in a relationship is a normal human response. The problem is how you decide to deal with it. That's where the mental aspect comes. So if somebody has had enough awareness that it's okay for me to feel dejected, feel angry about this relationship not working out, but let's not do something extreme here. By the crimes of passion that you're talking about, and that's what we need to deal with. People will not stop feeling, depressed or dejected, but how they react to these
Reaction,
feelings,
exactly.
that's the key thing. That's what we need to talk about more. That's what we need to tell people, that this is how you deal with it. Because since they don't know how to deal with it, they just react and do those crimes, and then they regret for the rest of their lives.
Exactly, because lives will be changed.
Yeah,
And that is why it's so important that we get it into the school curriculum, the discussion on mental health.
absolutely.
I know there are different programs that are focusing on this, but I think it needs to be more structured,
Definitely.
and it needs to be incorporated in a more sustainable manner.
Yes.
Dr. Bansal, I want to thank you very much, as usual, to share very informative with us as we try to raise awareness, or we work to raise awareness on the issue of mental health and how it's important for us to maintain a healthy um, um, mental well-being. As much as we take care of our physical health, we should also maintain a strong, um, have strong mental health,
Yes.
and keep it, going healthy. So thank you very much. I'll be back next time for another edition of Disability and You. In the meantime, I just want to remind you that disability rights are human rights.